Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Allison Schaff with SmashFly. I'm so thrilled you could join us for today's virtual conversation on the evolution of recruitment marketing. Before we jump in, just a few housekeeping items. Audio is currently streaming via your computer speakers or headphones. If you have any questions today, we'd love to hear them. You can type them right into the Q&A box in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. We'll leave about 10 minutes or so at the end of the hour together to go over your questions. If you experience any technical difficulties with ReadyTalk today, you can call ReadyTalk support at 800-843-9166. Don't worry about writing that down. I'll be typing that number into the chat window for your reference. Today's session will be recorded, and we will be sending you the recording and slides a day or so after the session. And final thought before we jump in and introduce our speakers, if you'd like to share your thoughts, comments, questions during the webinar, feel free to tweet at our speakers at Elise Schmidt and at Josh Sween using hashtag RMBenchmarks. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to our speakers to introduce themselves. Josh, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So as Allie mentioned, my name is Josh Lane, sometimes known as Jay-Z, because when I joined the company, there were, I think, 4 Joshes, so we just figured in the interest of simplification to give myself a nickname. So if you hear me reference as Jay-Z, it's just for simplicity's sake. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at SmashFly, and I've been with the company for about 2 years now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elise DeLange. I'm the other Elise. It's going to be fun as we go through this today. But a little bit about me is my career really started when I was sitting in a break room in college where I literally was right next to the coffee machine scanning resumes into an ATS. And that's everything that you can imagine it would be. That's exactly what it was, but all for a good cause, because what I didn't know then but what I know now is that experience really helped me find my passion in recruitment marketing. So I worked as a recruitment marketing practitioner, and in the last year I transitioned over to SmashFly, and I joined the SmashFly's Recruitment Marketing Center of Excellence. My day-to-day means, like, what that looks like is I'm partnering and collaborating with our clients on their recruitment marketing strategies, tactics, and really supporting their success and innovation in this space.
And I am the other Elise. So we have a really epic SmashFly trio on this webinar. I'm super excited, and this is probably the only time in my life where I've had another Elise in my vicinity. So excuse us if we get a little bit mixed up. You'll probably hear some nicknames going on in the webinar. But really quickly on me, I was also a journalism major turned marketer, and I spent quite a few years in marketing at content and digital marketing agencies in Chicago. Agencies will really teach you some scrappiness and the thick skin. So I learned that pretty early. And in 2015, I actually made the move to talent acquisition technology and have been leading content and social strategy as well as customer and partner marketing at SmashFly for the past 3 years. And so in my off time of not conducting the Fortune 500 research, which was an immense project for us at SmashFly, I'm constantly talking to practitioners and investigating the landscape of the industry to educate internal and external teams on marketing strategies and technologies for recruiting. And so with that, let's get started, why we're here. And so a little bit about the research. Obviously, you guys have seen that this webinar is based on the just released 2018 Recruitment Marketing Benchmarks report that SmashFly puts out every year since 2015. And so a little bit of history. You may have read this report in previous years. You may have just skimmed it, or maybe this is your first introduction to it. But SmashFly started this report in 2015 because we were interested in understanding how the most successful companies were adapting to new talent acquisition strategies, as well as the shift in the candidate mindset. So in 2015, we only started with 13 key strategies. And then in 2016, we actually more than doubled the criteria just because we saw such a huge growth in the scope of recruitment marketing. And now in 2017, we've amassed 3 years of data across what's now 37 recruitment marketing criteria. And those criteria fall under categories like content, initiative hiring, talent nurture, employer branding, and more. And specifically this year, as recruitment marketing has really become a discipline, and it's something that vendors are talking about, practitioners, SmashFly actually put on the first recruitment marketing conference. There's been such a growth that we really wanted to look at how the Fortune 500 has met the pace of change in the industry and market. So, all the chatter, all the hype, all the talk about new technologies, are these top companies actually adopting these things at that same pace? And we also wanted to look at how recruitment marketing might correlate to business revenue, Glassdoor ratings, candidate experience awards, in order to help practitioners build that business case. And Jay-Z knows this. I mean, we hear this all the time. How do we build a business case? How do we get investment in this? And so I think this is really what the 2017 report sought to answer.
Yeah, I think, and just to build on that, Elise, I think the key thing here is I think a lot of times recruitment marketing gets kind of classified as just a bunch of different tactics, or it gets viewed as in kind of this really narrow focus. So what we really try to do is look at this strategically and how these different components or tactics kind of fit together. You'll see this a little bit later, but a lot of companies invest in employee stories. And that makes sense, right? It's a great way to kind of illustrate or shed light on your culture. But there are very few companies that actually take those employee stories and email them out, right? So they've got a talent network, but they just share jobs. And there's really a huge opportunity to take the content that's already being created and use that in other ways. So we talked about kind of, the focus of this report. That's really what it is. It's not just evaluating these tactics, but evaluating how they fit into a strategy.
Definitely. And just so everyone on the line knows, Jay-Z and myself, Elise with an E, we actually were the lead researchers and authors on this report. So we know everything from the nitty-gritty all the way to the high level and the inception. And then Elise DeLange, she's actually jumping in as our recruitment marketing practitioner. So it's going to be really exciting to kind of ground this data and the research that Jay-Z and I did as marketers with that recruitment marketing mindset. So Elise will be jumping in later on a lot of really great examples. And so to get back to the evolution of recruitment marketing, when I think about this concept, two questions really come to mind. One is, how far have we come? And that's how far have we come since 2015, because that's what we have the data for. And then the second question is, have we come far enough? And I think the data from our research definitely shows that the industry has been progressing, but there's also an immense amount of gaps. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of look back to see what the chatter and what publications were writing about and what we were talking about in 2015 all the way to 2017. So let's take a look back. In 2015, you can see some, very common terms, things that we're talking about today: mobile recruiting, talent pipelines, nurturing talent, candidate experience. As a marketer, it's really exciting for me to look back and think, wow, in 2015 the industry was already talking about all of those things. But on the other instance, I think back to 2015 and how much my life has changed in 3 years. I bought a house, I got married, I have a dog. And I'm looking back at some of these headlines, and it's really interesting to see that it's very similar to what we still talk about now. So kudos to us, in 2015 that we were talking about this stuff. But now let's take a look at what we were talking about in 2016. And so here you'll see employer brand. Oh, sorry, Jay-Z, go ahead.
Sorry, Elise. No, I was just going to say, I think, 2016 for me stands out because that's when I joined the company. So it was a few months before HR Tech. I'll never forget kind of walking around and trying to learn this space and get a grasp of, who the vendors are in the industry, what customers are shopping for, what people are focused on. And think to Elise's point, it's a lot of the stuff that, people are familiar with for years. AI started to come about a little bit more. I think recruitment marketing was somewhat misunderstood, and it was, a very narrow focus on what it was. But to Elise's point, I think, there was some progression in 2016. I think some more acceptance or understanding of what recruitment marketing was. But again, still a lot of focus on the same old things that we've been talking about for, 5 years or more.
Yep, definitely. And I think from my point of view in 2016, just working at SmashFly, I feel like I spent a lot less time trying to educate about recruitment marketing, and there was a little bit of shift in talking more about technology. So you're seeing things come up like automation and AI. And it was crazy to me with how much AI was kind of this booming thing last year and still will be, that people were actually talking about it in 2016. So again, this is 2 years later, and AI is still this very new thing that people are still trying to figure out. And so now we'll look at 2017. And so this is last year. I know we're in 2018, but 2017 is still very close to what we're dealing with here, and this is the year that we did the research. And here we're talking about AI revolutionizing, recruiting a year later. We're still talking about experiences and personalization, CRMs. That's a huge question that we've been talking about and answering, since 2015. And we're still talking about the same fundamental topics. They might be framed a little bit differently, but the core is still the same. We're still talking about the same trends every single year. And I think the question really that, SmashFly wanted to answer this year is, when do these trends become the standard? When do these recruitment marketing trends actually become reality? And Elise, as a practitioner who's done recruitment marketing for companies and now works with a lot of companies to implement strategies, what's kind of your take about these consistent topics? Why are we still talking about the same things and maybe not adopting as quickly?
Yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction. We see that in this latest report. But the thing I see is that there's a disconnect between what thought leaders are talking about and what's really going on in our organizations. There are definitely some companies that we'll talk about later on that are pushing the boundaries. They don't want to just talk about the headlines anymore. They're actually doing it. But overall, I think what we've seen is that talent acquisition has really been missing marketing. Talent acquisition has historically been defined by transactions. We need to apply, select, interview, offer, hire, and don't get me wrong, those are all necessary and those are good. But in today, it's so much more about relationships and not just the ones that recruiters are owning to try and get through the selection process, but being relationally driven, brand-led, all the things that these headlines are talking about. But I think the headlines are where we're going, and we're still doing baby steps in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really interesting way to phrase it, because when we get into the research, which is on the next slide, we'll kind of see that, yes, we're making progress and we're changing things slowly, but it really does seem like baby steps. And Jay-Z, I know you're going to go over some of this high-level changes in grades and scoring.
Yeah, for sure. I think the good thing, and I think the good sign for our industry generally, and Elise, or AD as we're going to call her maybe, as she kind of alluded to, is there is definitely market improvement, right? And we noticed that in our research this year. So if we look at the chart here on the screen, in 2015, 41% of the Fortune 500 graded out at a C. Now, when we talk about A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, if you read the report, we break down kind of what we mean by that. C is kind of just what you might consider average, right? It's a company just getting started with recruitment marketing. There's really no sophisticated strategy in place quite yet. They might be dabbling with a few different things here and there, but it's pretty clear that they're at the initial stages of adoption. So again, in 2015, you'll notice 41% of the Fortune 500 was made up of those types of companies, while A's and B's, which is what we consider to be, kind of leading companies. So again, companies that have evolved their strategies and are starting to be a little more sophisticated and brand-led, and are avoiding kind of or staying away from some of the typical approaches of the past, which is very much kind of job board driven. Those companies were only 27% of the Fortune 500. So last year, obviously there was an improvement, right? But C's still outnumbered the A's and B's. This year, that number was, I think this is, probably the most remarkable part of this report. The jump was huge. So we had a 71% increase since 2015 in A's and B's, again, what we consider those leading companies. And over that same time frame, there was a 31% decrease in fees. And if we look at 2017 in total, it's an 18% delta or gap between the two. So it's great. It's clear that I think more companies are starting to adopt this stuff. The question I think that this leaves us, right, is as impressive as that growth seems, is 46% enough? So it's great that we now have half of the Fortune 500 that are very clearly investing in recruitment marketing, but that also means that 54% are still, either just getting started or way behind everybody else. So, it's one of those situations where we've come a long way and there's a lot of progress, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we can see this. It's really interesting to see the grades overall across the companies because it does show progress. And I think when we start getting into some of the tactics and the criteria, this is some of the shockers where you guys are really going to see, wow, still so few of companies are actually doing this. And so for how far have we come, I think it's great, and it's actually interesting that mobile, these are two of the criteria that we've been tracking since 2015. Obviously, 2015 was a huge priority for mobile. This is when the mobile get-in happened and Google changed their algorithm. Everyone was super worried. And this is also a year that mobile search had finally surpassed desktop search. So this was a huge year for mobile, and there was a lot of chatter, around this. And we've seen huge jumps. I still think it's surprising that in 2018, and knowing how many people are using their phones, especially the younger generation, that this isn't 100% of mobile optimized career site and mobile optimized job search. But these are the two of the most highly adopted criteria. So that's great. The two takeaways I have here is that one, there was actually urgency around this criteria with Google changing the algorithm, with so much chatter about mobile. So there was a really huge impetus for companies to have to change. And I think the other thing was, because of that, it was such a buzzword and such a hot topic, it was on the minds, I think, of a lot of C-level leadership and a lot of executives talking down to talent acquisition and what are you doing with mobile? Do we have a mobile recruiting strategy? So I think for this adoption, we really can tell that this clear impetus to change and enough industry hype does seem to drive adoption. I think what's interesting here, though, and Elise, I'd love to get your take on this. Mobile recruiting and a mobile-friendly career site or job search really doesn't equal a mobile experience. And I think that's something that when we see this really high adoption, I would definitely push companies and the A companies to really look at, is your career site just mobile-friendly, or have you really thought through a mobile experience for different personas and what people are going through? And so, Elise, what's your take on the difference between mobile-friendly and actually thinking through a mobile experience for talent?
Well, I think that's huge. Don't get me wrong, these are different. A mobile-friendly career site is a part of a candidate's mobile experience, and it's absolutely necessary, which we see. But what's missing with a career site that's mobile-friendly is the recognition that candidates do more than just visit a site. When they're thinking about applying for a job or thinking about a job transition, and they do that on their phone. So thinking through a mobile experience means that we're putting ourselves in the candidate's shoes. What do they do? How do they navigate? And how do they interact with your company while using their phone, not just on the career site? It might be something like how easy, you actually get out your phone and you test how easy is it for a candidate to watch a video that you've shared with them, or what do the job descriptions look like? Here's one. How far does the candidate have to scroll on the phone to get to the apply button? Is the apply process easy? Can they do it on their phone? Is a resume required? Because how many of us have a resume handy, saved on our iPhones? So the mobile experience is so much more than just having a mobile-friendly site. And I definitely hear companies, they're talking about this. They're starting to realize that there's a difference between a mobile-friendly and a mobile experience. And that's really where it's exciting to see this candidate journey, the candidate experience is becoming a priority. And I really expect to see more of these red carpet changes. That's what I call them. The catering to the candidates. This is going to continue to happen in 2018.
Yeah, awesome. I love what you're saying there about the candidate journey as well, and kind of thinking through how they're actually going to use this. And this is actually a really nice segue into the next slide about have we come far enough. So where you're seeing a lot of green bars and a lot of growth in some areas, this is a huge bummer. Jay-Z and I talked a lot about this, and we were really, really upset to see that there's been such little growth in these areas. And I think what you can see here is that we have not loosened our grip on the job focus. Companies in the Fortune 500 have not come far enough, and there's literally been little to no growth. I mean, 1% to 5% of companies that share content other than jobs to their talent network. 1% to 1% of rich media, images, videos, and job descriptions. It would be different if we were starting at an adoption rate of 40% and there was little growth. But we're starting at a 1% adoption rate on content other than jobs, or introducing videos to differentiate your job. And, you know, it's so interesting here because the number one priority we hear from so many companies, at least what they say their number one priority is employer branding, candidate experience, differentiation. And when you see these stats, I mean, all I can say is there is no differentiation when you focus on jobs. Job titles are job titles. Job descriptions are bullets of responsibilities. And unless we're adding things in here and really trying to improve this, no one's learning about your people, your mission, your brand, your goals. And focusing on job recs is not only company-centered, it's really just boring. And I just feel like talent, it's not bolstering the talent experience. And if you, I think, walk through your own site, you would really see how much some of this stuff would really boost it. And Jay-Z, I know you have a strong perspective on this because you had mentioned this earlier. It's also not that companies don't have these content. I mean, we saw 57% of companies have employee videos. It's interesting that they're not thinking about using it in other ways because they have this content, right? So, I mean, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's, everybody talks about in this industry that you have to treat candidates like consumers, and consumer marketing principles apply to recruiting just like anything else. But, I think if you think about your favorite brands and the companies that you buy from, what is it about them that makes you go back, right? If all that, I think Tom's is a good example, right? Tom's shoes. If all they did was sell shoes and all you ever knew about them was their shoes, there's no differentiation there. Their shoes really aren't that unique or that exciting, but it's the brand that you kind of latch onto. And if you look at how they kind of market, there's more of a purpose there, and there's more kind of more of a story behind what they do, and they do a really good job of marketing that. I think that's true of a lot of consumer brands. I think the big myth here is, jobs might apply or might appeal to an active job seeker, but they certainly don't apply to a passive job seeker, especially someone who maybe doesn't buy into your brand, doesn't know your brand, doesn't know why they want to work for you. You kind of have to earn their right, or earn the right to get their attention. And sending alerts is just not really going to do it. So to me, this is just a huge, huge area of opportunity. If I was a practitioner and I was thinking about ways that, or things I could do to start kind of differentiating or standing out in a candidate's inbox, or just kind of getting their attention, this to me is where I'd start paying a lot of attention to, or investing resources into.
Definitely. I mean, you have basically 500 companies that you could gain a competitive advantage on here. So there's a lot of room for growth here if you start testing this stuff out.
Right. And
so I think some of this research, I wrote this line in the report, and I think that this is something really interesting. When we see people slow to adopt, especially in talent acquisition, it's something that we talk about a lot with our customers and practitioners. And companies would never wait 3 years to innovate their marketing or their product. So why does it seem so difficult for talent acquisition teams to kind of invest in this stuff and change their strategy? And I think there's, a bunch of different reasons. I saw someone write in the chat box that some industries are slower to adapt. But we do, we have, as we showed, been talking about this stuff since 2014, since 2015. And, is it budget? Is it resources? Is it lack of urgency? Is it really leadership? Is it the C-level that isn't empowering talent acquisition to do this stuff? Because I know that we talk to people. I talk to so many practitioners that are dying to change. They're dying to get budget and push boundaries. And I really believe that talent acquisition is the next function that's going to have a massive impact on the bottom line of companies and driving talent to be more profitable. That's how companies flourish. So, I mean, Elise, as a recruitment marketer, I know you actually initiated recruitment marketing on the marketing side. You came from under marketing. So can you maybe talk to some of the differences you see in these functions and why you think talent acquisition just might be a little bit more slow to innovate in comparison?
Absolutely, yeah. So in a previous role, I actually led our recruitment marketing technology and strategies, and I did that while sitting on the marketing team. So that's what Elise was referring to, and that's not exactly how we proposed structuring recruitment marketing, but it did give me unique insights into what the rest of the marketing team was doing, automation, content strategies, tracking, measuring, testing new tactics, and channel development. I mean, the list goes on. But I think this goes back to the fact that talent acquisition has been for so long an HR function, and it should be. Let me get that out there. But the mindset in marketing and product development, that directly correlates with the success of the company. And although it is very popular to say that our people are our company and it's all about our people and all the, they're what make us a company. That's who we are. It's hard to get past what I was talking about earlier with the transactions that are required to hire. So I think we have a lot to learn about what's new and exciting and innovative in the marketing space, and we are starting to figure out, and we need to continue to figure out how to apply those to the acquisition strategies, and that's going to be so fun. So, but we definitely need to start doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I love anyone on the line to kind of tweet us and chat us why they think this might be happening and their companies are what they've seen. So I'm going to pass it over to Jay-Z to kind of quickly dive in a little bit more to what the Fortune 500 are and aren't doing across tactics, and then we're going to kind of jump into some examples, which will be really fun. So take it over, Jay-Z.
All right, thanks. So I think we're transitioning a little bit here from, what we've noticed over a few years to diving a little bit more into the tactical trends this year, kind of where the Fortune 500 has progressed and what they're doing now. Before we do that, I think I mentioned earlier kind of breaking down how we score companies out and what these scores really mean. Again, if you read the report, we break this down on a full page to kind of go into our methodology, but it's closely tied to this maturity model that we use internally to help customers kind of gauge where they are. Again, a C is what we would consider kind of average, right? It's a company just getting started. They maybe don't have a clear strategy or process yet. Maybe they have the beginning stages of an employer brand baked out and they're testing new tactics, but there's no real strategic direction yet. A D we say is initial. What we mean by that is they've expressed interest and maybe they're doing one or two things that indicate some progression toward recruitment marketing, but there's really no strategy, no effort to build a talent network or community. Typically very little nurture of the community they do build if they have one, and little to no presence of a consistent employer brand. B and A's, I think again we call these kind of leading companies, and a B again we have labeled here as predictable, but what that is the company has less focus on jobs and more on brand and culture. And they've either started to build a talent network or they have a talent network in place and they've begun kind of a basic nurture strategy. The A's, again, are kind of all of the best parts of the B's and C's, but in a really nicely packaged strategy. So there's a clear strategy in place for personalized nurture, for example, and every communication that's sent out to a candidate, whether it's on the career site or through an email campaign, everything is very kind of consistent and focused on the brand. So when we talk about tactic trends over the course of the 2 years, I think the thing that's interesting is that it's very clear that companies are starting to think about how to segment and target their messaging. Obviously, diversity is becoming more important or is extremely important in a lot of companies. There's a lot of focus on military and veteran hiring. I think companies are getting much more focused and kind of targeted on job family content. So it's less about just, generic kind of cultural values and more about how those cultural values attach to specific job families. What we've noticed from 2015 to 2016 is an 8% change in diversity content, an increase in the production of that content. For job family content, that's gone up just 2%, so less focus there, but a relatively large focus on military and veteran content. And then again, moving to some other trends here. So, again, we talk a lot about the potential to use content to engage candidates. I think it's interesting to see that there's been an increase in the use of a talent blog or talent or content directed toward specific talent. This is just an increase of 6%, but it's an upward trend nonetheless. Employee stories has only gone up 1%, but that's going from 57% to 58%. So, it is good to see that more than half the Fortune 500 are already doing this. I expect that number to go up over time. And then the use of social and career channels. So what we mean by this is not just having or sharing content on the corporate social channels, but creating career dedicated channels. Again, that's up 14% from 33% to 47% of the Fortune 500. I think
yeah, great.
I'm passing to Elise here, but go ahead, Elise.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it's good to see that all of those arrows were trending up. I mean, nothing has gone down, but still, to your point, it's really surprising in terms of experience and themes on transparency that, or even social media that's been around for 10 years now, that there's still not a ton of traction. But again, we're getting into probably 50% of companies that are doing this stuff, and hopefully we'll see higher growth and adoption in the next few years. But it's definitely not lost on me that in the beginning of the webinar, we've obviously been focusing a lot on, why there hasn't been change fast enough, or maybe not as huge of jumps in adoption that, maybe us on the marketing side would have thought. But the great news is, and this is really the exciting part, is there are companies leading the pack, and they're moving away from the middle, and they're really doing some innovative things. And so we're going to take a look at kind of how do the A players separate themselves from the low performers, and then we're going to actually look at some of the top A scores and what they're actually doing live on their career sites. So really quickly, to kind of show the gap between the high and low performers, this stuff's really interesting, and this is the first year we really kind of took a look comparatively side by side to see what A's are doing differently than D's and F's. And I really think that this provides a roadmap for kind of, if you're on the lower end or you don't know where to start, look at what the A's are doing. Look at what they're succeeding in. Look at what most of them are doing. This is a really great recruitment marketing roadmap. And so the stark difference isn't really surprising. I mean, obviously you would think that the A's are doing a lot more things than D's and F's. But when you see things like 92% of A's have employee videos on the career site versus less than a fourth of D's and F's, it really spotlight these key themes and areas that make a high performer a leader. So you can see things like optimizing for Google Jobs. And this is a really interesting one because this just happened in 2017. So you can see those A performers are jumping on these trends. They're making the trends a reality the year that it's being talked about versus, waiting a year or two to actually jump on that. So that's a really interesting one. And then obviously, as Jay-Z was talking about, some of this personalization and targeting in terms of messaging, getting employee stories, featuring diversity content. And then another really stark difference, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of the webinar, but the widest gap between the high performers and low performers is in how they think about building and nurturing relationships with talent. I mean, look at the difference here. I feel like the A's just dropped the mic when it came to talent nurture. And it really says something about how high-performing companies think, more proactively, more long-term, brand-focused, versus maybe some of the lower performers who are thinking, short-term apply, driving to jobs. I think it also says something about the technologies that these companies are using. You can't really nurture talent well without having a CRM and automation and segmentation. So we can, speculate that some of these high performers and these A's are getting that investment, getting that buy-in, and implementing the right technology. So not only are A's offering an option for talent to learn more without applying, that provide an option for Talent Network or offer job alerts, they're doing a drastically better job on delivering that promise. So one, they send regular communication, and two, they personalize that communication. 76% versus 0 when it comes to sending personalized job recommendations. I mean, there's really no better roadmap to an A than looking at some of these gaps here. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add or if you just want to jump into the examples for time. Thinking we go into the examples?
Yeah, I think so. I think those are pretty self-explanatory, right? I think these examples are really going to showcase what we mean by a high performer.
Great. Okay. I will jump in first, and then I'll pass over. And just so everyone on the line knows, we're actually jumping. We're going to be sharing our screens to walk through some of the career sites live. So there might be a little bit of a lapse when we jump over. So I will be sharing my screen now. And we're actually going to be looking at Aramark. Okay, my screen should be shared. Aramark is one of the most improved companies in the report. In 2015, they received a C, and in 2017, they received an A. So these types of companies I'm so proud of them, and it's awesome to see because in 2 years, they've jumped 2 grades. And it really shows the results and success you can have when you actually prioritize some of this stuff. And I know that Aramark has really done this and really focused on brand and building out a talent community as well. So if you take a look here, you can quickly see that starting in search, Aramark, their career site comes up right at number 1. They're doing a great job with SEO because people can actually dive in here to food services, hourly and seasonal. I actually see something coming up for regional jobs. I'm based in Denver. And better yet, you can actually see this Google Jobs widget. And so when you see this coming up for active job seekers, these are all going directly back to the Aramark career site. So these jobs, you're not seeing Glassdoor, you're not seeing LinkedIn or Indeed. Their career site is optimized for Google Jobs. So when active job seekers come in, instead of going to a third party and seeing competitive jobs and they get distracted, these people are actually going to get to the Aramark career site. And that means more time on site for Aramark. It means they can learn more about the brand and kind of build that differentiation. Because again, as we've been talking about, job titles and job recs aren't really doing that. It all looks the same to talent. So that's a great thing where they got some major points in terms of SEO. Moving on to their career site, you'll see right away there's no stock images. Yay, major kudos. It's real images of real employees. And they also do a great job of talking about you. It's about the talent. You're what's next. If you scroll down a little bit, imagine your impact. Your future begins today. I love that empowering you messaging. They also have a great amount of calls to action. So you get here and you can search for a job if that's what you're looking for. Or you've maybe heard about Aramark but want to know a little bit more, and you can pop into the Talent Network. In the nav, you can also go right to Why Aramark or About Us. So it's really good in prompting, and there's a lot to do right when you get here. And then diving into one of the pages, this is honestly one of the best pages I've seen for employee stories. It's in their Our People nav. Imagine your impact. And they talk about the impact on the community, on different lives, and the talent's future. And so they're really attacking employee stories from every angle. Quotes, pictures, videos right here. And then also something that I loved, they actually show this one person, one of their employees, their route and their internal mobility, showing a career growth plan. I have not seen this on very many sites, and I love this. So not only does it give a really personal story, it's showing you can grow, you can stay. If you're a millennial and you're thinking about job hopping, we actually keep our talent. So I love this, and I think kudos to Aramark. They got a lot of points in employer branding this year, and they're doing a really excellent job. And then really quickly, 2 other things I wanted to show about Aramark. they're thinking broader about the talent experience, and that's what we're seeing with A performers. They're not just focused on the career site. They're optimizing for Google search. They are improving their career site, but they're thinking about where talent goes. And two places that people go every day are social media and their own email inbox. So I love seeing that Aramark sends an automatic reminder for people that have dropped off their application. Within 48 hours, you'll receive an email automatically, no recruiter has to do it, saying, hey, we saw you stop by. Actually, if you want to return to the job application process, you can do it right here with the link, and it prompts that, which is awesome. And I actually don't know the stats from Aramark, but I know of another company who's done this, and they saw 182 hires, not even applicants, hires that were made from this one automated email. So that's awesome. And then Aramark's also doing an amazing job on social. So they have their own career handle, so talent knows to follow this. That's going to be more about opportunities and employees and less about the actual corporation. And they really have a lot of images. They're curating content. They're sharing diversity content. I mean, talk about fuel to repurpose some of this stuff for their career site, for sending into their talent network. They're really active and doing an amazing job on retweeting and actually sending things to talent, what they would want to see on social media. So kudos to Aramark. They were one of the A players, and they earned one of the most improved. So Jay-Z, or Elise, I think you're going next with GE, so I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, GE. So we like to call GE the marketer, and we're really original. That's because they absolutely rock at marketing across all of their channels with lots of different tactics. We see a consistent experience where their employer brand is concise, their language, their colors, their voice, it's the same. So what we're going to take a look at first is a campaign that they actually sent out at the beginning of the year to their talent network, which they called their GE Careers Connection Network. So cue brand opportunity. They didn't just go with the status quo. They took that as an opportunity to put their GE stamp on even the name of the community. So they gathered, and just like Aramark, they gathered these leads, and at the beginning of the year, they sent out this email, and this was not about applying. As you can see, jobs are hardly even mentioned. But what this is about is it was the opportunity to give candidates could figure out what their purpose was in the workplace in 90 seconds with this really awesome quiz. And who doesn't love that? We all love learning about ourselves, learning what's going to be the best, what's the best for us. And to do it in a quiz makes it that much better. So GE really gave their candidates a way to learn about what types of careers they do well in, what their strengths are in, how they can rock their next interview, their why, their purpose statement. And all of this was useful content, not just for the candidates who might decide to apply to GE, but just to help job seekers so that they're better job seekers, period. That's it. So we were just really impressed with this campaign that they started with. And then hopping over to the careers page, on the home page, it is similar to Aramark. It's super easy to engage. There's social icons, and I love this button, find your role. And did you catch that? Because it's not find jobs, not search jobs, find opportunities, but find your role. How do I fit in this organization, and where do I find it? I find it by clicking right here on this button. And scrolling down to this first piece of content, as I was looking at this, it says find your purpose and build relationships with GE Internship. We just saw an email where they wanted to help candidates find their purpose. So there's a consistent messaging with their campaigns, with what's on their career site. They're not just they're not siloed in what they're talking about. You're seeing it in multiple different places, which is absolutely brilliant. And going over to my GE story, this is, I think, one of the most ingenious things I've seen recently on a career site. It's dynamic, it's real, and it's authentic, and it's exactly what it says is, hear what real employees have to say about working at GE. So these are real stories from real employees, and candidates want to know two things. I might have already mentioned this, but I'll mention it again. They want to know two things. One, what it's like to really work, what it's really like to work for your company, and 2, what the job is really like. So what better way to find out about a company and what the job is like, what the company is like, than to hear from an actual employee. They can search by what type of story. They can search by location, so we find stories that are relevant to their area, or by business. So I'm interested in GE corporate, and what does that look like? So with this, they give employees a voice, and then they give candidates the insight. They give them the opportunity to see and hear from real employees. And this, let's not miss this part, because anyone can share their story by clicking this button. It actually opens up like a single sign-on page, so it's not that pretty. I'm not going to click on it. But any employee can come here and share their story. This call to action, although not for candidates, it tells me when I put my candidate hat on that GE cares and wants to hear from their employees, that they have a voice, and it's simple to get that out there. And the last thing that we're going to look at for GE is a very targeted talent segment that I love. They have recently, in the last year, set good faith goals to increase the number of women in STEM roles by 2020, and they also want to increase the representation of women in their technical entry-level leadership programs. I'm starting to speed up. So with this, they're talking about balancing the equation, and they share about what's going on. You can watch this really awesome video, which Millie Dresselhaus was the very first woman to win the National Medal of Science and Engineering. Through this campaign, at the very bottom, they're able to gather people that are interested in balancing the equation. And this is brilliant. Candidates have a way to raise their hand and be a part of it. And so GE knows and is able to gather these leads, knowing that they want to be a part of this initiative, and helping GE accomplish that. So ultimately, GE is telling their story, and GE is a part of every aspect of the candidate experience. They're pushing the bounds with what it looks like to capture leads, and their brand is living and breathing, and that's why we call them the marketer. Jay-Z, you want to take it over now?
Awesome. Yeah, we'll do. All right, let's see here. All right, so hopefully everybody can see my screen. I'm going to go a little bit through this a little bit quickly, just in the interest of time. But Intel has ranked as the top performer 2 years running now in our report, and I think it's pretty easy to see why. If you just look at their career site, the one thing that I think stands out to me is the simplicity and the cleanliness of it. It's very kind of brand focused. But more importantly, what really stands out on this page is the simplicity of the navigation, right? So if you go here, you can kind of figure out what life at Intel is like, what's the culture like. Here you can kind of explore jobs by functional area, business unit. But you also see the calls to action, right? So this stands out. They want to draw the attention to this and make it easy for you to kind of see it, click on it, and engage with them. But if we kind of move into their experience, and it's not going to show up because I've already kind of experienced their exit intent pop-up, but we call them the innovator for a lot of reasons, but one of which is they really kind of push the boundaries and test new things. What you're seeing here is something that they've implemented recently, where if you're on the career site and you go to leave, this pop-up comes up to capture lead information. So it's called an exit intent. It's pretty common in marketing in general, but it's pretty rare in talent acquisition. But again, what this does is forget people that aren't going to apply. This gives them a chance to capture people that visited the career site and maybe weren't going to convert via the talent network call to action. This is just another way to kind of capture that talent and begin the process of building a relationship with them. The other thing with Intel, as you go through their site, is, again, the consistency of the brand, right? But I think the diversity of the content as well. So everything is focused on Intel and Intel's culture and why it's kind of unique from an employer brand and employee value proposition perspective. They're pretty great about featuring employee stories, right? They also segment their content by initiative. So diversity and inclusion has its own page. All the content is specific to that, with stories that are specific to that. When it comes to job family, they also segment content by that. So here's a page just about their autonomous driving group. And again, everything is tailored to this specific part of the site. For data scientists or their data center group, again, they have a page dedicated to this, right? And it's people telling their story specific to this job family. And then just as Elise and or both Elise's pointed out too, Intel's also optimized for Google for Jobs. So if you look for jobs, their career site is the first thing to pop up. Kind of cuts out those job boards in the middle. And then when you get into emails too, everything again is brand forward. It's targeted to the person receiving the email. It aligns and is consistent with the brand experience on the career site. And it, again, gives them another way to kind of capture, engage, and ultimately convert the candidates they do interact with. And then lastly, somebody had asked about what the difference between kind of a general social careers handle versus something that's run through corporate. Intel does a good job of this. So again, it becomes another distribution channel to share the stories and content they've already created and make sure that it gets more eyeballs just for the people that maybe aren't ever going to visit their career site. All right, that's it for Intel. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to kick it over to, I'm going to advance the slides here and kick it to Elise.
Yeah, so unfortunately, you guys will get the slides after this, and we've kind of talked about some of the gaps here, but I highly suggest you kind of look into the shocking stats and the opportunities. We're going to skip over these just in the essence of time because we do want to get to some questions. I thought something really quick, though, that people might want to look at just like in 20 seconds. As we've been talking about nurturing talent and kind of thinking where we saw some quick wins from what we were seeing with the Fortune 500, 1, 2, 3, 4, changing your sender name to your talent network. That's not do not reply. That's not whatever your vendor is. Making sure it's something like GE's talent acquisition team or Aramark recruiting. That's a way to kind of get your brand there. And so you don't go into spam, and 2, the candidates actually know who's sending it, so they open it. 2, link to your Glassdoor page. If you have a strong review, have a little icon to that so people can go read more. 3, set up that auto reminder reply email via a workflow if you do have a CRM. That's something that Aramark we showed and Intel does. So if you have it and you're not doing it, that's just a simple automation trigger that no one will ever have to follow up with on a half-finished application, and the system will do it for you. And then 4, repurposing your career site content for email newsletter. So we kind of showed this too. Think about every month, what are you putting on your career site, your employee stories? How do you get that into an email? How do you send content other than jobs? So those are some 4 really quick wins. And then we really won't be able to dive a ton into this, but we did have a slide on what's next for the A's. And just at a glance, so we can get to the last 5 minutes for questions. And again, feel free to tweet me or Jay-Z. Elise is on LinkedIn. If you want to message her, we can talk more about this. But at a glance, what we think the A's are going to do are really look into true artificial intelligence adoption, really understanding how to utilize a chatbot on their career site, and get smarter with sourcing dynamic job descriptions and dynamic website experiences, so changing based on the user, tracking who that person is, what their behavior is, and making sure that changes. Videos will pop up, different content based on region, based on job family. That's something that I think we'll start seeing with the A's. And then an internal talent network. So instead of putting someone in kind of this internal I don't even forget what you call it, but having something for your own candidate to go onto your career site and actually see the jobs too. So that's something for internal mobility that I think we'll see as well. So that kind of wraps it up. I'm not gonna say that these are going to be criteria for next year, but hint, hint, maybe they will. So we might be scoring on these next year, but I'll kind of leave these final 5 minutes for questions. And Allie, I'll hand it over to you as the question wrangler.
Yes, thank you, Elise. Great job, guys. It is me, the official question wrangler here. We do have some great questions coming in, so thanks for submitting those, guys. This is one we got that I think is a great question. For the companies that are ranking as A's for these like A players, do you guys guys have any insight on their internal TA infrastructure to support these initiatives? For example, do they have like a really robust team to support employer branding initiatives? What is your insight on that?
I think Elise might be a good one to answer this, but I think the answer is no. I mean, it really kind of varies. We've seen teams. So Great Clips is an example of a company that's not in the Fortune 500, but is, I think if we had graded them, would have ranked as an A. But that's a one or two man team with some freelance designers and freelance content creators. So you have everything from that all the way up to GE, which does have a pretty dynamic, pretty robust employer branding team. I think it really varies. I think it depends on kind of what your goals are and what resources you have. You can get pretty crafty with minimal resources, to be honest.
And
yeah,
to add on to that,
oh, go ahead, Elise. I know you're a practitioner and you work with those teams. So go ahead and jump in.
Both Elises. This is when we get into trouble with this, Elise. And we definitely have, and I've partnered with some of our clients who, instead of having a dedicated resource, they have people on the talent acquisition team, recruiters, who are really interested in social. And so they kind of are able to take that part of their recruitment marketing strategy and have some ownership of it. So like Jay-Z was saying, there are definitely opportunities to look at your current team and their interests and skills and see how you can foster some of that to take you even just one step further. I know we've talked about like these grand examples, and they are what I would want everyone to be striving for, but there are small wins with your current team, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, Elise, just real quickly on that, I think, when you think about video content, it can be really intimidating. But I mean, everybody's got a really expensive, nice video camera in their pocket. An iPhone and some basic video editing software can get you to a point where you can shoot some really good employee story videos and some interviews with hiring managers. Just a quick video on your culture. All that stuff can be repurposed to use in email newsletters or your talent network or on your career site. So that stuff doesn't cost any money. It takes a little bit of time, and you have to be a little bit willing to kind of test and screw up a little bit. But if you're willing to do that, I think anybody can really get started with this.
Awesome. All right. Next question. What would you guys say are the advantages of having career channels in addition to corporate channels?
I could take that one.
At least you're
with an E.
Yeah, I would say you're a social rock star.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just better to target. Social media, when it started, was like everyone was like, yes, I can message as many people as I want. I can send all the content in the world. I'm going to reach all these people. And I think we're starting to see, as probably anyone who uses social media, is like, holy crap, I followed way too many people. Too many people follow me. I have all these streams, and I can't see anything. Like, I can't even see what's important to me, especially on something like Twitter, when people are tweeting like a zillion times a second. It's really rare for one tweet to even be seen by anyone at any given time. And so I think it's better to segment your talent audience to more of a corporate audience. So if you're a B2B company, you want to kind of have businesses and who you're selling to, looking at what you're doing as a corporation. There's so much other content and messaging that you can have to talent and a talent audience that's much more specific to them, that's super valuable. So I would just say that's the number one reason. It allows you to be more strategic in the content you're placing. It allows that content to be seen by the right people. Instead of sending everything across the board on your corporate channel, which is just, seriously, everything you can ever send to every potential audience, I just think it really gives a better mouthpiece from the talent acquisition team and employees directly to the talent that's interested. And how amazing, every single person that follows your careers handle, they're likely interested in careers. So like you're almost creating this little mini pipeline by figuring out all of the people that are following you for your jobs or career handle.
Right. Absolutely. And follow-up question to that, what do you guys think about having, a standalone career site versus having your career site live under your corporate site? What are your thoughts on the SEO behind that?
So this is Elise again. I would say that, and I mean, Jay-Z and Elise, let me know if you agree. I feel like you definitely should be coming up number one for your career site, like in Google when people are searching it. But a lot of the times, we kind of do this. A lot of the times someone might just look at the company. They might just go to GE and expect to be able to navigate there. So I always think it's smart to have your own URL. Like you definitely should have aramark.com/careers for the SEO, but that should link from your corporate site. I'm a huge proponent of let people get there how they get there. If someone's typing in Aramark careers, amazing, they can get right there. But if someone's searching Aramark and they really like the company and they want to get to your career site, make that, a tab in your top or in your nav so they can navigate there. You just don't know how people are going to get there and what their experience is. So that would be my suggestion, is having it in the nav of your corporate site, but making sure there's a standalone URL, to your point, that benefits SEO. Do you guys agree or have different opinions?
No, I agree. I think it's all about navigation, right? Google's algorithms have gotten so sophisticated at this point that, I would say there's some engineering you can do to make yourself more visible in search, but I think it's really just thinking through, to Elise's point, what's the experience for the end user, for the candidate, right? If you're making it difficult for them, then Google's algorithm picks up on that. They pick up on friction. They pick up on things that you're doing to make it difficult for them. So simplicity is always kind of the goal here. The easier it is to find your stuff, the more likely it is that Google is going to reward you for that. So I think Elise is spot on.
And one thing I'll add to that, this is the other Elise, is that, we're running out of time, so I'll be really quick. Is that career site is one of the things that I see as a practitioner, that people try and reinvent the wheel, but the reality is that candidates, they do the same things. They want to be able to find jobs. They want to be able to find out about the company. They want to know about the corporate mission. And so I think I would say having a corporate site in your career site is the best practice to be able to give the candidates, meet the candidates' expectations.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We are kind of running out of time here. We're actually already a couple minutes over the hour. I do have kind of maybe one or two more questions I think would be really interesting to talk about. If our speakers don't have a hard stop, you want to just tackle those last two and then call it a day?
Sure. I see some people on.
Sounds good.
Answer.
Awesome. All right. So one, this comes from someone who is fairly inexperienced in the recruiting field and working for a nonprofit. They had kind of a question around ATSs. Is it a trend for ATSs to have kind of a clunky application process when you're just using your ATS to drive that? Is it kind of common to have that login step and clunkiness like that?
Yeah, so I'll tackle this one if you guys don't mind. So yes, the answer is yes. It is very common. The ATS was never designed to be kind of a lead capture pre-apply. It was very much designed to be a process tool. So how do you get people to apply, and then once they do apply, how do you funnel them through the process of application? It's the whole reason that we kind of advocate for a talent network form in the apply process. So what a lot of our companies or customers do is insert that talent network form right in front of the apply flow. So before the application process begins, there's the option to join the talent network. And the reason that's valuable is it gives you a chance to capture that person in the chance that they ultimately don't complete the application and drop off. So the problem with username and password is it's a big commitment for someone who's not really committed to or interested in applying to a job. With a lead capture kind of in front of that, and all you're really asking for is first name, last name, email address, and maybe the area of interest that they have. That allows you to at least capture that person's information and start a relationship with them. And if they never complete the application, you can reach back out to them and re-engage them if you want to. But without that in place and the username and password being the first point of contact, it creates a lot of friction and I think what we've seen at least, a huge amount of drop-off.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay-Z. And finally, do you guys have any tips about getting your talent acquisition team members to adopt this kind of mindset of recruitment marketing and employer branding? Because as you kind of covered, despite being around for a while, this is still an emerging discipline that's kind of growing in adoption. So what would be your tips for kind of garnering buy-in across your team and getting people to start thinking a little bit more about this? I don't know who wants to take this one.
I think that's AD, Elise with an A.
Yeah. I think one thing is this report. So this report shares a ton of, this is the data behind recruitment marketing. So I would say that if you have talent acquisition, especially leadership, that is just still hesitant, not necessarily on board with the impact of employment branding and the importance of it, I think that this is a place to start. This deck, this report. What I have found with a lot of my with a lot of the clients that I've worked with is that it really does start at the top, and when we can show the value to the leadership, then we really start to have buy-in as it kind of trickles down. When it comes specifically to branding, I think there are opportunities to, like, an easy tip is like give templates to your talent acquisition team. Any of those people that are sending out communications, if they have a template that follows the brand and aligns with the brand, what a quick and easy way to, one, be more efficient on their side because they don't have to type all this extra stuff, and two, align with your brand. So is that helpful, Elise, JZ? Any additional tips?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say adoption is hard. I mean, you're gonna experience I mean, even in marketing, when there's new things, people don't like change. It's difficult. I think the best thing that you can do is provide that urgency, make sure that it's a top-down thing, really show results and impact of maybe other companies that have done it, and just allow your team to kind of walk through some of this stuff, whether it's taking a recruitment marketing certification or reading some of this report. Start getting this thinking in front of them. If you know any marketers, talk to your marketing team. Try to pair up a marketer and maybe one of your recruiters in terms of email marketing or thinking through nurture. I mean, this is stuff that has been ingrained in marketing teams, and I think that, we do this in SmashFly. We work really closely with recruitment marketing. Elise, she came from marketing. So kind of getting people talking within the organization, making sure that your team can actually see real use cases, and this stuff just isn't theory, and it isn't just saying that it's nice, I think could be really helpful. I mean, it's easier said than done, but definitely just, connecting people, making them see the use of it, seeing other results might make them realize that this could really help them be more effective.
Yeah, I think just the last point on that, I think Elise touched on this, but I think it's super important, is come up with a list of, your top 3 or 4 competitors, and maybe not your competitors in a sales sense, but who you think you can compete against for talent, and start looking at their activity and their strategy. See if you can kind of figure out what they're doing, because, again, benchmarking yourself against them isn't necessarily the best barometer of what you should be doing, but it gives you a sense of whether you're really far behind and you're doing something, or you're not doing something that they should be doing, or if your competitor base is really moving in a direction that you aren't, and what are the implications of that? Like, I think it's not to say that you should chase everything that your competitors are doing, but I think having a sense of what they're working on and what they're focusing on, where they're investing their efforts and time, gives you a sense of whether you're behind or ahead, or if there are certain things you should be investing in or maybe not investing in. So I think just generally it gives you a good sense of where the market is and where your company stacks up.
I love that, JZ. I think that's an excellent exercise for any talent acquisition or recruitment marketing team to undertake. Well, 10 minutes past the hour. Thanks to everyone, more than 100 people who stuck around to the bitter end here to hear the rest of our Q&A. I'll take that as a good sign that our speakers did an awesome job providing some valuable content. So, again, we're just thrilled you were able to join us today. Hang tight and keep an eye on your inbox, because we'll be sending out the recording and slides from today's presentation within the next 24 hours or so, so you should be receiving those. If you have any additional questions, feel free to tweet us at SmashFly on Twitter. We'd be happy to answer any queries there. So have a great rest of your day, everybody, and to our speakers, another big thank you. Great job, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And thanks, Allie. Bye.